Welcome to the CourseProfs podcast. Whatever you teach online, we'll help you make better courses and deliver more impact. Coming up, Course Creator News, all the latest updates and insider information from the world of online learning. Our featured guest, bringing you an expert's eye on building a successful course business.
The day you put out your first piece of content, you're already a community builder of some sort, right? You've already put your voice out there. You're already a leader. You've already crossed the big hurdle of getting yourself out there, putting yourself out there, sharing your opinions and views. That's what a leader does.
And today's top tool to make your courses shine.
Welcome to the CourseProfs podcast. I'm Simon Denant, founder of CourseProfs.com. Glad to have you with us today. And have we got a jam-packed show for all the course creators out there? Later in the show, we'll be finding out how to build a successful online community with our featured guest, Sumeru Chatterjee. But first, let's get a quick roundup of the latest online learning news from around the web. Leading learning management platform Thinkific recently celebrated its App Store's first birthday. If you're using Thinkific as your learning management system, you can add even more functionality to your courses through the App Store. And over the last year, they've added more than 80 apps from independent developers. Some of the latest apps to be added to the Thinkific App Store include a multi-currency converter to show your course prices in 150 currencies, Woo Ninja funnels to help you create automations when students sign up, and Course Map, an app that guides your Thinkific students to take sections of your course every week, helping increase the overall completion rates for your courses. Now, if you're not using Thinkific as your learning management platform yet, why not? It's super simple to use and delivers a great user experience to your learners. Check out all the features of Thinkific's Pro Plan free for 30 days at go.courseprofs.com/Thinkific. TechSmith is due to release the latest version of its popular video editing and production software Camtasia in June. They're keeping details under wraps before the launch of the 2022 version. Hopefully we'll have the lowdown on all its new features in the next episode of the CourseProfs podcast. However, if you're currently a Camtasia customer and subscribe to their maintenance program, you should receive the latest 2022 update for free as soon as it's released. So look out for that in your inbox. And if you haven't seen Camtasia yet, it's our video and screencast editor of choice. You can get yourself a free 14-day trial and road test it yourself at go.courseprofs.com/techsmith. And lastly, the podcasting platform Anchor now hosts video podcasts in a recent release update to their software. You may or may not know that Anchor is owned by Spotify, and Anchor now automatically distributes video podcasts into Spotify itself, alongside its existing suite of audio distribution tools to all the other podcast stores like Apple, Google, and many others. So if you've got any video content from your courses that you think could be repurposed into a video podcast to promote your course business, and you haven't yet started a podcast, there's a big audience to be had on the podcast platforms. Head on over to anchor.fm to get started and check it all out. On today's show, we're exploring the power of communities and how you might set about building a successful online community of your own. Now, many of you might have participated in online communities and groups on Facebook, Slack, or Reddit, or if you're a veteran of the internet, some of you may even remember public and private forums as the gathering place of choice online. Whatever the topic, peer-to-peer learning through communities seems to be on the rise. So why is that? And with many digital creators wanting a piece of this action in their own content businesses, how do you create your own successful online community? To enlighten and educate us today, I'm excited to talk to the founder of customereducation.org, co-founder of ShareCoro, and former head of education and community at Thinkific, entrepreneur and downright all-round brilliant guy, Sumeru Chatterjee, better known as Sumeru. better known as Sumo, in fact, to his friends. So Sumo, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Simon. Super excited to jump into this topic and also not only just educate, but also learn from you and be a part of the conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, these chats are here to inform and entertain. So before we dive into talking about communities, let's find a little bit more about your journey into the world of digital content and technology. How did you end up where you are today?
Great question. I'm happy to jump into it. And if you're listening to this podcast, you're probably thinking about your own story as well. And you probably realize that no one has a straight line into digital content and course creation. Everyone I speak to has a very twisted path. There isn't really a direct, you go to college, you learn about digital content creation, and then you become a content creator. Most people have found their way in very twisted ways. So my story is very similar. I studied computer science and economics in college, was desperate to be an investment banker on Wall Street. And so somehow finagled my way onto Wall Street, working for one of the largest investment banks. And that made me realize that I actually really dislike banking and everything to do with large corporate finance. And so that led me to a different trajectory, working in technology, really starting at the ground level on, customer support. You'd call me and be like, "Hey, this is Sumo from Adapar. Like, how can I help you today?" And from that, moved my way on to customer success, which is a function that helps people get more value out of software products. And then I really found myself excelling in the training sort of subsection within customer success. I loved being in front of a classroom or an audience and teaching people how to use software. Traveled all over the world doing that for a couple of years and just really found my groove teaching and sort of educating and entertaining, like you said. And I thought, okay, well, there isn't really a teaching or training function within tech. This was back in 2015. And turns out, after speaking to a couple of people, that there was a growing movement called customer education, which is this idea that if you are selling a product, whether it's software or something else, you need to educate your customers. So imagine going to IKEA and buying a big box of wood. You come home and you're like, how do I make this into a bed? Well, IKEA has a little pamphlet. It's amazing, easy to understand. Anyone can use it. And you can take a box of wood and make a bed out of it. And for a lot of people, that is one of the primary experiences of customer education. You take an IKEA box, you make a bed out of it. And so I spent several years doing customer education. And then during COVID, realized that there was an opportunity to take my expertise in teaching, and convert that and reach a broader audience through online courses. And that's how my entrepreneurial journey started. So amazing. A twisted, winding way into education and content.
No, I love hearing these stories because everybody always kind of wonders how they fell into customer education, creating courses, teaching online. And as you said, there isn't a straight path. And I think it's reassuring when we hear stories like that everybody kinds of, especially over that timeline that you mentioned from 2015 onwards, it's really taken an upwards trajectory. It's happened exactly the same path for me. And I know our listeners and viewers will definitely kind of resonate with that for sure. So let's dive into community, because that's where we find you right now. Let's try and pick your brains a bit and find out, firstly, how you would describe the essence of what an online community is for those people that have never considered actually building one themselves.
Great question. So if you're listening to this podcast, you probably are interested in online courses, online education, content creation. Maybe you're thinking about community. But at the heart of what you really like to do is you really like to help people get better at whatever it is that you do, right? It's about sort of serving a audience, serving a community, so to speak. And if you just take a second, just close your eyes, take a deep breath, and just think back to your childhood and think back to your best memories as a kid, there's a good chance that there's other people around you. There's a good chance that you're in a playground with friends, or you're with your cousins at your family vacation, your summer home, or you are traveling with people that you love, or just being a kid, right? But I can guarantee you that there's other people involved in that picture. And so ever since we are children, we experience the joys of being in a community where we feel safe, where we're having fun, where we're growing and learning, and joking and pushing each other. But it's a safe environment, and everyone sort of has a common set of values, and there's a lot of love for each other. So we've all experienced that through different contexts, either through school or through our families or through a religious institution. But it's a pretty common, universal experience of feeling like you're part of a group that that loves you and you love them back. So to me, that really is the definition of community. That hasn't changed in thousands of years. It's been how humans have organized for ever since we've moved out from being hunter gatherers. It's just that in the last couple of years, we've seen digital versions of that for the first time. So now you are no longer restricted to communities that are within a few miles of you. You can find your tribe of people that love playing the piano, or of people who love stitching, little kittens, or people who love Dragon Ball Z. And you can find your tribe across the internet, and in different parts of the world. So to me, community is basically about finding people that love what you love, that share a common space of interests and values, that share a safe space where you can be yourself and let other people be themselves. And in some cases, you're building something sort of bigger than yourself.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Sounds like there's tons, obviously, of benefits. So for content creators specifically, who might be interested in building a community, they might not necessarily think of themselves as a leader. So what would you say the creator of that community's actual role is in that community? Do you think they are a leader? Do you think they are a facilitator, an enabler, or something totally different?
Yeah, great question. So maybe we'll just jump in for a quick second into why a content creator might think of building a community, which maybe I didn't answer in your previous question. But if you take a step back, what we've been doing from the online content space for the last 10 years or so is that these social media platforms have encouraged us to create content and build an audience, right? And we've been on this sort of an endless loop of trying to create more and more content on a daily basis, trying to build an audience that's bigger and bigger. And having done that for a decade or so, a lot of digital content creators are realizing a couple of things. One of them is that they're just feeling burnt out about this constant content hamster wheel of having to produce videos and social posts every day, right? And there's a little bit of fatigue from a content production perspective. So that's one. Two is a lot of content creators realize is that they are building their audiences on platforms where they have no access or say, right? Where these social media platforms are the landlords, and content creators are basically, sort of renting that land, but they don't actually own their audience. They have no way of directly communicating with their audience. They have no information about who their audience is, what their audience likes. That information is stored and saved by these social media platforms and used to, service ads and other things that the platforms benefit from and the creators really don't see. That's number two. And number three is a lot of content creators realizing is that they don't need 1 million followers to build a successful creation business, right? We're going back to this essay called The 1,000 True Fans that David Kelly wrote many years ago. And the idea is instead of trying to build an audience of 1 million people that are lukewarm about you, you can just have 1,000 people that really care about what you care about, and you can build a successful business off of that. So those are the sort of tailwinds that have propelled the rise of communities instead of the rise of large audiences. So we're saying instead of building an audience, build members. Instead of creating content, create community. Instead of trying to maximize the size, right? Focus on deep and dense relationships. So that's a little bit on what has propelled the rise.
Yeah. So just jump in there. So it's kind of what you're saying is, to paraphrase that, it's about the conversation, not about the broadcast, effectively, which is what a lot of marketing used to be.
100%. And I think we are seeing, people today want authentic conversations. They want to feel like they are a part of the conversation. They're not just listeners or an audience. Like nobody wants to be spoken at. People want to engage and interact. And so a lot of content creators have realized this and are saying, instead of me broadcasting to my followers, what if I just start a conversation where everyone can talk to each other? To answer your question on what is the role of a content creator in building a community, my short answer is, the day you put out your first piece of content, you're already a community builder of some sort, right? You've already put your voice out there. You're already a leader. You've already crossed the big hurdle of getting yourself out there, putting yourself out there, sharing your opinions and views. That's what a leader does. So I sort of like challenge the notion that, if you're a content creator, you might not think of yourself as a leader. You are already a thought leader. That's why you've decided, after building your expertise, that you want to share it with the world. You want to help the world. Those are the things that a leader does. So I think the content creator does play a role of a leader. But to me, a great community manager or a great community builder, it's less of a leader, less of a facilitator, less of an enabler. I think the word I like to use is be a cheerleader, right? A cheerleader is a leader. But their main job is to amplify and cheer and celebrate the success of their audience. So, and everyone loves a cheerleader, right? Like no one looks at a cheerleader and says, "Oh, I don't feel very good about this." Like everyone loves cheerleaders because they amplify amazing things that are already happening. So to me, that's the role of a content creator in the community.
Yeah, and there's no better feeling than when you're providing service and you see things come back from that service that you provided, and people take that, run with it, and then do such amazing things. So yeah, I mean, the cheerleader that gets the winning team just must feel so proud. So let's dive in and actually talk tools, because you mentioned a few of them earlier. There are many community building tools out there. There's Slack, Facebook has groups. I mean, there's WhatsApp groups if you're on mobile, the old staple forums, Zoom meetups, Clubhouse, and lots of applications have inbuilt communities as well. Where would you start? And it's interesting. Could you expand a bit on what you said about the whole thing about building your communities on other people's land?
Yeah, great question. I'll jump into this. I've been doing a lot of research over the last 2-3 months on the community platforms out there. I'll tell you a little bit on what I'm thinking. But before I do that, I want to caveat this question and this answer by saying, if you are listening to this question and hoping for, the right community platform, let me caveat this by saying it doesn't exist. A. B, don't let technology stop you from doing what you need to be doing. So I spoke to a lot of content creators, and they keep waiting, thinking about I don't know what email marketing solution should I use, right? And so they never write the first email. Or I don't know what the right course creation platform is, so they never draft their course outline. Or I don't know what the right community platform is, so they never start to build connections. So we'll talk a little bit about community platforms, and I think I'll tell you a little bit of what I'm seeing in the market, what I like and don't like. But don't let the tool stop you from doing the work. That's probably my number one piece of advice. In terms of building community, community platforms might be one of the few things where you want to think through your platform choice, because unlike email marketing systems, which are easy to switch, or like a course creation platform, which are very super easy to switch, community platforms can be a little harder to switch. And that's because, you sort of start to build habits around a particular place, and that can be hard. That's not to say that you shouldn't change community platforms as your needs change. There are several community platforms out there, like you said. The popular ones are the big free social platforms. I would say Slack, Discord, Facebook groups are probably the most popular ones out there. They're very easy to set up. Most people are used to using them. And they serve different kind of purposes. So Facebook groups are really great for social, sort of interest-based communities. Discord is very popular in the Web3 space for people, focusing on cryptos and NFTs and Web3 projects. Slack is a little bit of a it's more of an internal communications platform that has been warped into a community platform by a lot of users. So those are popular options. And then you have a lot of standalone players that are coming up, that are newcomers into the market trying to fill the gap. But my biggest advice is really focus on where your audience already is and try and build a community that most closely resembles their current behaviors. So ShareCoro is my online learning business. We started that in 2020. And we quickly realized that we want to take a community-led growth approach, which is that we want to build a community. And then from within the community, some people will naturally choose to buy our course. And so our audience were Indian consumers, specifically Bengali people who were interested in the stock market. And we realized that 85% of them were on mobile, and they don't actually own computers or laptops, many of them. And so we realized that they're very familiar with WhatsApp, which is a very popular messaging platform. So we built our community off of Telegram in the first, in the early days, which is a very similar tool to WhatsApp, except that it provides, some community features on a larger scale. And so we grew our community from 0 to 20,000 members just off of a free Telegram platform before we decided to invest in something bigger. So that would be my advice: is just think through what are your audience's behaviors already, right? If they are spending most of the time on Instagram, maybe you want to go for a similar mobile first experience. If they are more professional and spend more time on desktops or computers, maybe you can use a desktop first client. So I would sort of really think through your audience behavior first, and then and then pick a platform.
Yeah, good advice. Good advice. So the other thing about this is, when should you start a community? Should it be when you're starting out your online content or business before you start, or do you kind of have to have a certain number of people, maybe on your mailing list or something, when you have a certain number of followers on social? How do you get to a critical mass and start growing your audience, and kind of where do you get started, or when do you get started on building your community?
Yeah, great question. So for the typical content creator, there is a content maturity journey that a lot of people like to build. They used to be called funnels. I don't think people think of them as funnels anymore. They're sort of like a maturity journey in your audience's path or audience's journey. So a lot of people will start with content creation on these large social media platforms like Instagram or Facebook or TikTok or LinkedIn. And what that does is it allows you to reach a broad set of people relatively quickly, so more people can discover you. So they're very good for discoverability of your brand, of your message, of your knowledge and expertise. As soon as you have a little bit of a following on social media, where people are liking what you're saying, they are giving you positive feedback, they're asking for more, I think it's time to start building a community, right? Okay. And the community is the next step in the journey, where you say, hey, you've been following me on social media, but it's been a one-way communication. How about we start a two-way communication? And that's when people will invite them into your community. And within the community is where you really help them solve problems. You provide your best content. You engage with them. You let them talk to each other and solve each other's problems. Really give away the farm in your community. And then content creators will say, hey, if you'd like even more, I have a paid product, right? Which might be an online course, a coaching program. It might be some sort of, cheat sheet, PDF, whatever it is that you're selling. But at that point, people already love you so much. They already love your content. They're so engaged with your brand. And they think, wow, my free experience was so good. I wonder how good, the content, how much value there is in their paid product, right? And so your audience says, I've been getting so much value from this person for free through their social, then to their community, that now I'm ready to pay for their product. So I would say the typical maturity journey is social media audience, where it's one way. Next is community, where it's multi-way, everyone talking to everyone. And then the last is your paid products. And then within your paid products, you can start at entry-level products and then go all the way to the more premium, coaching type of products later down the journey.
Yeah. So do you think community is kind of, I wouldn't say the ultimate trust builder, but way up there at the top over kind of other strategies for trust building online?
It's changing. I think when 5 years ago, community was at the bottom of the funnel, right? Where it's you've now, you bought something from me. Now I'm sort of like going to bring you into a community to like keep you around, and I think sort of community is moving higher and higher up in the journey because it scales much better. You can have member-driven conversations. Members can like answer each other's questions, so you can do communal support, communal content, and because community offers more and more value propositions for the community builder, it's moving higher up in the journey. And we are switching to this new model called community-led growth, which is this idea that you build a community first, and then you build a business around the needs of that community. And Web3 and a lot of the Web3 projects, specifically around crypto, really prove that model out to be very successful. And so we're seeing this like proliferation of community-led growth, where the idea is build a community and then design your products and services around that community, as opposed to the other way around.
Yeah. And I'm sure many of our viewers and listeners have experienced this. What if you start a community and all you get is crickets, literally no activity? I mean, what sort of things can you do to encourage users to participate? I mean, what can you do to encourage that growth that you talked about? Any tips or tricks around that?
It's a great question. If you're listening to this podcast, my bet is you know the answer to the question. Maybe you just need someone to remind you of it, right? The people that are listening to this podcast are content creators. They are digital creators. They understand engagement, and they understand activity and really like digital excitement better than anybody else. So, my guarantee is if you're listening to this podcast, you already know the answer to that question. Maybe I can help just remind you of what you already know. Couple of things to keep in mind is it's no different than when you were first starting out building content and putting it out there, right? That fear of what if I put out content and nobody cares about it, right? That's always going to be there. And digital creators get over that fear and find success. So that fear is not going to go away. You'll just learn at some point to overcome it. That's number one. Number two is that community engagement is actually significantly easier than content engagement, because each new member of the community adds another point of conversation, of engagement. So if you're just getting started out, my best advice is to create what I call high gravity communities, right? So be thoughtful and mindful of the experience of the first 10 to 50 people. Make sure that they are the right people. Make sure when they join your community, you spend a lot of time doing quote unquote unscalable things, messaging them over DM, thanking them for joining the community, asking them why they joined the community, what they're hoping to get out of it, asking them if they know one other person who they're willing to invite. If you do those things properly in the first 50 people, you'll realize that you've created a system that basically scales on its own. Because if every member invites just one person, after your first 10, 20 users, you are starting to see, logarithmic growth, right? Because it just sort of doubles and multiplies on its own. So it's just that you got to be very mindful of what you do initially and do the things that are not scalable, that are not automated, by reaching out to each new member, getting on a call with them if possible, asking them about what their hopes and aspirations are, and really focus on delivering a valuable experience for them, at least in their first 14 days. Yeah. So if you nail the first user experience, you'll never have that problem.
Yeah, it's interesting. I want to pick up on something you said there, because it's really interesting that you talked about kind of seeding the community and being mindful about kind of nurturing that seed in the same way you would nurture a plant, right? And building that seed and then growing it from there, and you get a healthy plant at the end of it, right? So that's very interesting that you mentioned that, and that's a great strategy, because I mean, perhaps a lot of community builders might miss that at the beginning, because then all you have to do is kind of replicate the type of people you want in, as you said, the community, and then you build a community that is effectively more of the right people in there. And actually, on that point, talking about things like ground rules, safety, and who you have in those community circles, there has been a lot of media attention recently, particularly around the negative aspects of social media communities. what advice would you give to ensure that users of your community behave themselves? Obviously, you can kick people out, but that overall, mainly looking at how you can keep the community remaining a safe space for everybody to kind of really grow that trust between themselves. Any tips on setting rules and enforcing them?
Yeah, good question. So maybe I'll answer it in three parts. Firstly, I just wanted to commend you for that visual analogy. I really like the analogy of seeding a community. And if you think about it, you're laying the seeds in the community. You're hoping, you're helping the first plant grow, right? And maybe you're helping the first 5 or 10 plants grow. But once you do that, the end result is a forest. It's not one healthy plant, right? It's a forest that is beyond what you can see and beyond what you could have imagined when you were first laying down the seeds. And just like a plant, right? They germinate themselves and they sort of spread, they bring on new plants and the ecosystem grows on its own. But as long as you're being a good gardener or a good, steward of the first 10, 15, 20 members, you can hope to expect a forest at the end. So that's a beautiful analogy. I'll definitely keep that in mind. Second is, let's get into a little bit of the safety and sort of fences around the plan, so to speak. The number one most important and most under talked about in the realm of safety, security, and governance is actually the community builder's own motivations, right? So most people talk about how to create a safe and inclusive community, and the focus is always on the members, but no one actually talks about the responsibility of the community builder. So because of the rise of crypto and NFTs in the last year or two, we've actually seen a lot of bad behavior from community builders, where people are basically using community and this idea of communities to run Ponzi schemes, to run scams, to run like crypto pump and dump schemes. And that has brought a lot of negative attention to the role of communities in digital content creators' lives. So I would say the number one thing is to make sure that you are building the community for the right reasons. You're doing it because with an attitude of service. You're doing it with a goal of educating and inspiring around something that's actually meaningful, right? And you're not just doing it as a sort of get rich quick scheme, which a lot of people have tried to use communities for in the last year or so. So you as a community builder have it's almost like there's a community code of conduct for yourself, right? Similar to like the Hippocratic Oath for medical professionals. There's a Hippocratic Oath for community professionals, so saying like we're going to build communities, we're going to use our powers, in a responsible way. So that's number one. For members themselves, I think there's a lot of literature out there on how to create safe, inclusive communities. A lot of it is just like laying down the foundation principles, like just sitting down and writing, why did I build this community? What am I hoping will be the kinds of conversations we have in this community? What is not okay as well in this space, right? It's okay to say what's not okay. So let's say you're building a movement or creating a community for Black Lives Matter. It was probably one of the most important movements that came out of the last, 5 years or so. Anyone can be a part of the Black Lives Matter movement. It's inclusive in that way, as long as you believe Black Lives Matter. Right? If you don't believe Black Lives Matter, then you can't be a part of the community and you don't belong there. But as long as you believe Black Lives Matter, you can be a part of that community. So similarly for your community, you got to lay out the foundations and in writing, layout of, you can call them guidelines, a charter, you can call it, you can call them a code of conduct, but lay out specifically what you believe to be true. What do people need to believe as well for them to be a part of the community? And what is it that you won't tolerate as part of your community experience? So I think if you're clear about them in your own head, if you can write them down on a piece of paper, and if you can share them as part of the daily conversations, then I think you'll have a safe and inclusive community.
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. I mean, when I started CourseProfs, the first thing I did was put together the manifesto. It's like, what's the mission and purpose? And what do we want to achieve for the people that we want to serve? So that makes total sense. And lead by example. I think that's absolutely brilliant. Wish some of the governments around the world would do a little bit more of that, but we won't get into that now. do you think it's a lot of work to manage a community? Some people might kind of stave off building a community till later because they think, well, it's a ton of work. But from what I've seen, certainly in the communities that you run, that I'm in, things like customer education, you've got people doing kind of peer-to-peer help. So kind of what strategies do you think can encourage that type of help between the community to kind of grow and help each other out in that? How do you get the confidence as a community owner to allow users to organically own their space? I mean, obviously you have to trust the users and, like you say, build the right people in there. But firstly, it can feel like a lot of work to get it started. But then secondly, it could feel like, I built this space and I want people to help each other, but like I have to hand over some of that trust, and that can be quite a leap for some people.
Yeah, you really dug into both the things that hold community leaders back. So I'll try and do my best to break them down. The first one is community a lot of work? In the initial days, yes, it is a lot of work, but it is no more work than you already putting in as a content creator. The difference here is that communities scale a lot better than audiences. Because if you're trying to build an audience on a social media platform, you are firstly adding one person at a time. And each new person doesn't make your followership any more valuable, right? You just added a number. Whereas communities scale much better. Each new member in the community actually adds more value to the community itself, right? So the total value that you can produce or derive out of a community scales much quicker, much faster, much better than a traditional audience building exercise. So is it a lot of work in the beginning? Yes, it is. But you'll find out very quickly that the work scales a lot better than if you were just building a content engine, which leads to a lot of creator burnout. And that's one. Two is, if you do community well, you can start to share a lot of that responsibility with your community members. You can share moderation responsibilities where you don't have to moderate every conversation yourself. You can share content creation responsibilities where your members will create content for you. You can share, sort of administration and back-end responsibilities where your users will do it for you because they love being a part of the community and they want to give back, right? So think about your traditional quote unquote, like community within your neighborhood or within your religious institution. People get value out of them. So they volunteer to help, right? Whether it's your local food bank or whether it's your local church, people volunteer. And you can build some of those principles into your community. Yes, you have to give up a little bit of sort of ownership and control. But my framework for this is like, you never really own a community, right? It's not an entity that you own. You are a steward of a community. You can be a shepherd of a community. You can be the cheerleader of a community, but you don't really own it. It's not a piece of, it's not a thing that you can buy and sell on the market. So if you take that attitude and if you take that mindset, then you'll find that it's a lot easier to share your responsibilities with your members and give them ownership, because that helps them grow. It helps your business grow. It reduces, the burden of running a community, and you stop being a bottleneck of your own community's growth. So initially, there's a little bit of work. And then the second part of this is getting out of the way and letting the community grow beyond you, right? And I think that transition can be a little tricky, but it's very, very rewarding.
Yeah. So good advice. Get out of the way like that. and let other people do some lifting for you. Because sometimes, you feel the responsibility as a content creator that everything's on me, but people do want to help. And I really do think that they actually enjoy help, and you're helping them by letting them help. So who's doing community well? Have you got any good examples of things that you've, companies or users that you've seen that are building great communities that maybe our viewers and listeners could take a look at and study, or even join as like examples of best practice and excellence in building community? Yeah. So basically, who's doing community well? Any examples?
Great question. I've been studying good communities for the last 8 months or so. And so there's a couple of ones that come to mind. It really is broad. Asking who's doing community well is like asking who's doing content well, or who's doing business well. The there's a lot of different scopes and a lot of different sizes and the total responsibilities of community varies widely. So you can have a content creator who has 1,000 followers, but they produce amazing content and their 1,000 followers find it very valuable. But you also have content creators that have millions of followers, right? And are producing content at mass scale. So it's a little hard to say like who's doing it well. There are some communities that I like being a part of, and I think have done well. A lot of them are in the software space, because that's really my expertise and that's where I spend a lot of time. But if you think about very quickly like the history of communities, you'll see that there's very good examples throughout history. Obviously, going all the way back thousands of years, we've seen a lot of local communities, neighborhood-based communities. In the corporate realm, like Harley Davidson comes to mind, right? In the 60s and 70s, Harley made a motorcycle, but what people were really buying was the membership into, the Hells Angel or like these other Harley riders clubs. And this idea of Harley being more than a motorcycle really took off. And so companies and creators have been trying to recreate that experience for a long time. Recently, Peloton has been in the news for creating an amazing community of people who love exercise and who are very passionate, but maybe, have to be at home because they have responsibilities. So Nike Run Club is another example of a product company that sells shoes, but really created a community of people who love running. In the tech world, I particularly am a big fan of what Notion has done and what Miro has done. So they are both communities, or they've created communities of creative professionals that like to share templates and resources and help each other out. If you ever try to learn a language, you probably use the app called Duolingo with a little cute green owl. And Duolingo has built an amazing community where like thousands of people host local meetups all over the world under Duolingo's brand, but they don't get paid by Duolingo to do this. They just love meeting other language learners in their city. So Duolingo has unlocked, community-led events really well. And, in the creator space, this is a little bit of a controversial figure, but Gary Vee has done a lot of experimentation around communities for creator economies and, sort of brought in Web3 in a really interesting way. So there are creators who are focusing on community building. Miss Excel is one of Thinkific's creators, and she does a great job of creating a beautiful brand and connection around her followers. So there's good examples everywhere. I think if you're listening to this podcast, you have been a part of a good community where you've been like, oh, wow, this is really fun. I'm meeting people like myself. So I would just sort of think back to your own experiences, right? Like what were communities as a kid, as a teenager, as a professional that you love being a part of, and sort of like study them and see what you really liked about them.
Yeah, I mean, that I won't fail to mention your community, customereducation.org, which is fantastic community I've been part of now. Wow, it feels like forever. But it's been built with a great bunch of customer educators in there. So it's fantastic to be a part of that. And yeah, but as you say, it kind of brings us back full circle to where we started. It's like where you started was people who started out maybe listening to this podcast thinking that community was a tool. It's actually much more than that. It's a connection to people. And I think what you mentioned about things like Harley Davidson, it's a lifestyle. It's a shared experience for people. And I think hopefully people who've listened to this conversation have kind of taken that journey and changed their minds a little bit about thinking about the hard facts of what to do, and more to do with like how to do it and who to do it for. So it's been like amazing advice to really turn people's mindsets about how they approach community. The final thing I'm going to ask you today, which I ask all my guests, is that all the guests we have on, I know, have worked really long and hard to get where they are today. Success doesn't come easy, and if you've had any kind of traction online, then you've worked really hard for it. And on that journey, you will have had highs, you will have had lows, and loads of kind of learning experiences that would have brought you incredibly valuable knowledge. is there one mantra? I mean, you only have to pick one, unfortunately, because I'm sure there's loads that you have, but one kind of overarching mantra that you could share with our audience today that you think you kind of live by because of the journey that you've had? Always keen to have like that one bit of sage advice that gives people a lift.
That's a good one. Wow.
I mean, just to give you an example, mine is progress over perfection, right? Because any forward motion gets you forward. It gets you to the next step, whether you've done it well or you've done it bad. You'll either succeed or you'll fail. And if you fail, you learn something along the way. If you succeed, well, you go out and party. But I always, my overarching mantra is progress over perfection. So I can just move something forward. So that, that kind of thing, like what drives you?
Yeah, I think if there's one overarching theme for my career, and when I talk to creators specifically, because I love the creator economy space. I love people who overcome the fear of putting themselves out there and like really sharing their message with the world. I think if I were to summarize it, it would be start a movement. There's a lot of people doing, individual like businesses and things. And some of them find success and a lot of them fizzle out, right? But it's people who really want to start a movement that excite me and, that I find a lot of commitment from and that I think will be successful in the long term. So if you're a creator, or if you identify yourself as an online educator or a course creator or a creator, then you're doing this because you sort of like, there's this idea that is bigger than yourself, right? It's bigger than your business. It's bigger than your brand. It's bigger than your logo. You believe fundamentally that there needs to be more people behind X. And so really spend the time defining what X could look like as a movement. Like the most inspiring people in history all had a movement that they were known for, whether it's Mahatma Gandhi's, movement to get the British out of India, or if it was, Malcolm X or Martin Luther King, or like just revolutionary leaders that we've seen. They all had a movement that was much bigger than themselves and lived on even after that they were gone. And so I guess my overarching theme is like start a movement. And build something that people will want to continue with even long after you are no longer a part of it. And that to me is what motivates me to get out of bed. My movement is to help is to help people build communities, right? Like that's what I'm sort of betting my next 30, 40 years on. And I'm very bullish on the idea. So I'd encourage everyone listening to this podcast to like, after listening this episode, turn down your phone, pull up a notepad, and just write with a paper and pen on like what you think your movement is going to be. What is it that people will get excited about for 10, 20, 30 years from now, even after you are no longer a part of it? If you can nail that down, I think everything else becomes a lot easier.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, and out of those things comes life-changing things for people. So it makes a big difference, and there's no kind of higher purpose and reward that you can get by making a difference in somebody else's life. So definitely wise words from Sumo there. Hey Sumo, look, it's been brilliant talking to you today. Some sage advice from all the extensive experience that you've had in communities, and some great personal advice from all your life experiences too. So I'm really grateful for you sharing that with our audience and hopefully inspiring them and building the change makers of the future. So I really appreciate it today.
Thank you. Yeah, and thank you for being a part of my community. Like I said, I'm trying to build a community of community builders within customereducation.org. So if any of your listeners want to connect with other people who are on that journey, more than welcome to join the space. And yeah, I'm excited to continue learning about course creation and creators and the creative economy going forward from you as well.
Yeah, and where's the best place to get in touch with you if somebody wants to reach out and join your communities, follow you?
Absolutely. I'm very active on LinkedIn. So if you just go to LinkedIn .in/sumo, you'll find me. That's where I spend a lot of time thinking and reading and discussing communities. Obviously, if you want to join a community of other community builders, customereducation.org is a great place to start. We have about 1,600 community builders today. That number will keep growing. I'm also on Twitter at YesSumo. I'm still learning how to use Twitter, and we'll see how that goes. But LinkedIn and my
Let's hope it sticks around if Elon Musk.
Exactly. So now I feel like I need to learn how to use Twitter. But LinkedIn and my own community are probably the best places.
Nice one. Excellent. It's been a pleasure to speak to you today, Sumo, and much success to everything that you do in the future. Thank you so much again for sharing all of your wisdom today. Making your courses accessible is an important task. Some of the students taking your courses may have hearing impairments, and users may have trouble understanding your course if they speak a different language. So offering captions and transcripts of your videos helps them understand your course content better. Up until now, getting your videos captioned and creating transcripts as well as translations has been an expensive task. However, using a machine-generated tool like HappyScribe, you can create captions, transcripts, and translations at a fraction of the cost of a human doing these for you. Basically, HappyScribe gives you the ability to create captions, subtitles, and transcripts from any video that you upload or pull in from an external source. Now, I find it a really good platform because it is cost-effective. It's certainly cheaper than getting a person to actually transcribe or caption your videos for you, and the AI machine language system is really accurate. So it only takes you a few minutes to go through the transcript that it generates and make any corrections. We've got a full tutorial on using HappyScribe at our website, CourseProfs.com. So if you need cost-effective captioning for your course videos, check out HappyScribe for yourself at go.courseprofs.com/HappyScribe. That's all from CourseProfs for this episode. Keep making progress with your course business, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for tuning in to the CourseProfs podcast. We share our best stuff by email. Subscribe and stay in the know at CourseProfs.com/podcast.